I noticed that this port light was a little damp after a rain, and last year it leaked a little bit. I think right here, right where this seam is, I think water is getting in here, so I have to rebed that, and that'll be a fun little project. We're going to take out the screws of this port light here so we can look at potentially rebedding this, but if nothing else, we'll start exploring and figuring out what we need to do to potentially replace this crazed plexiglass or polycarbonate, whatever that is. And certainly the main reason is to prevent this from continuing to leak. Good news is that this wood does not look damaged at all. The fiberglass looks pretty good. So even though we had some leaking, it doesn't look bad. The integrity of the mounting area here is good. Okay, I just taped up that opening that I've exposed by pulling out that port light. I'm going to need to acquire some materials now, some polycarbonate to cut it appropriately. I got to buy a jigsaw and a few other gasket material. I think those old gaskets, they don't sell anymore, so I got to replace it with a newer version. So all fun stuff. Hopefully we don't get like a significant rain or windstorm out here that blows out that opening. All right, unsurprisingly, like most projects, trying to replace this port light has been challenging. So I bought a jigsaw and used the jigsaw for the first time, and I bought a polycarbonate sheet and cut the polycarbonate to fit the frame of this port light that goes in my Pearson 424 catch. And that turned out to be quite a challenge. It took me a little bit to learn the jigsaw and how to leverage it properly and cut a straight line and cut it slow or fast. The sanding involved, I iterated between just hand sanding and using a Dremel with a sanding drum and a multi-tool with a sanding attachment. And you know, basically a combination of those last two things works pretty good to just smooth the surface. And I attached to it this material that is a silicone weather strip. And it's a U-shaped weather strip that fits over like a skin on top of the polycarbonate. And you know, cutting that and getting around these corners was a learning curve and a little bit of a challenge. And you can see the polycarbonate comes with a protective coating, and I did go through a material and actually did this already once and pulled that protective coating off. And you can see how dinged up it gets pretty quickly. You know, I pulled the protective coating off before I started sanding. That was a mistake because, you know, anytime your sanding drum slips, and now you got scratches. Also, bringing this project from the boat back home and back and forth without the coating is going to ding up the surface as well. So I've gone through some learning challenges. I also lost a backing. Hopefully you can see that little piece of wood backing. This is what the backing looks like before, you know, so I have one metal backing. That's the original backing still. But that wood backing now is now new. And I just kind of fashioned it to replace the lost or missing backing plate here, because when I close this up, they should come in nice and tight. There you go. Just like that, right? That is nice and tight, nice and tightly placed. And then I should be able to screw in on those backing plates so that it remains nice and tight. I'm going to have to pound this in. I found that, again, with this weather stripping, I think it's a little bit thicker than what it was before the old original weather stripping. Certainly compressed over time. And here's what the old kind of looks like. It's certainly compressed. I'm sure this is why the portlight was leaking. This is the new stuff here, a silicone. And again, I think it's just a little bit thicker. And as a result, it is creating more challenge to fit everything into the frame. And I'm going to have to, there's what it looks like when you put it over the top of the window. So I'm going to have to pound this together, take a hammer and just basically, you know, pound along the edges here so that everything fits nice and snug. And then hopefully today we can replace this. All right, we're going to pound this together, and then we're going to look to add weather stripping into this thicker slot here. I've got weather stripping for that, so that is going to be the next two steps. What I just did is I put this butyl tape around the edges. So there was this empty pocket that I cleaned with acetone, and I also cleaned the surface where I'm about to install this frame. Two bezels that are put together. Time to get the silicone out and start working with that. Yesterday I came out here and I had pretty much had everything ready to mount this portlight. And I had put on this butyl tape, which you can see here on the edges. I applied this tape that basically does not harden. It's like rope caulk. It has a consistency of more like a silicone though. So I've just kind of like pushed it all in here. And I then put silicone caulk all around the edges and proceeded to push it in here. I had dry fit this window first without the butyl tape. And that turned out to be the problem because when I tried to fit this with that butyl tape on here, I couldn't get this thing to set properly. And I had a nice sticky mess. You know, this would not seat. And the silicone was getting everywhere, the silicone caulk. And yeah, I had a big old mess. And I would say that this is not still quite sitting properly. And what I've been doing is pulling out some of this butyl tape because it's so easy to use, right? Because it doesn't harden, it maintains like a putty consistency. I can just pull out some of the stuff that I installed and then reapply it, just kind of like bed it down and try to get that surface so that everything will just sit in here properly. And then once that's done, once I have this completely seated in here nice, and so the frame is as flush as possible onto the hole, like it is kind of up here, but I just need to do a little bit more. And once that's all done, we're going to pull the silicone back out after we clean, make sure all these surfaces are nice and clean, everything on the inside here is nice and clean, and then we'll reapply silicone caulk and finish this job, which I really look forward to. I pulled this out, I cleaned it, I got rid of as much silicone as I could off of the frame, and I cleaned this with acetone out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to silicone caulk all but the last edge right here, because it seems like the way to put this in is feed it in like that, feed it in right there, and then get this, wiggle this in, just like that. So if this is dry, I'll get everything in and then just hold this out and caulk this as the last thing. So that way I can kind of like control this a little bit better as opposed to having it all wet. Well, this is looking pretty good. I just put the bolts in on the back of this bezel, and yeah, it is pretty flush now. It's mounted. And there you go. She's installed. Alright, so I put some protective plastic on the outside of this window because we do expect a little rain coming in this evening. And I want the silicone to cure for 24 hours. And I do realize that I made a mistake, or at least I didn't install it, reinstall it, rebed it the same way it was. I actually turned it upside down, and this little seam here on the bezel used to be on the downside, now it's on the upside. I don't know if that's impactful or not. I did not notice the window having a top or a bottom. It seemed symmetrical to me, but the mounting screws tell the tale. You can only mount this bezel one way, and the mounting screws are now on the opposite sides. So please leave a comment if you have an opinion on whether or not I just screwed up and I'm going to have problems, or whether or not that is not an issue. I'd really like your insights. I want to thank my subscribers. I really appreciate your support. If you've stayed till the end of this video, please consider hitting that like button, because that would absolutely help this channel grow. This is Sailor Eric. Thanks for watching.